Hot topics from the soul. Yeah. Hot topics from the soul. Yeah. Hot topics from the soul. Reaching all minds, turning knowledge into gold. Yeah. Hot topics from the soul.
Hello and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan, and I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. America on Edge, family, finance, relationships. Where do we go from here? Let's talk about it. Have my co-host.
Hey, and good evening, Dr. J.R. Thicklin. So glad to be with you here on this wonderful evening because, in fact, there's so much to talk about, so much that have happened even since our last time together. And it's time to call a thing, and really have a real conversation about what's happening here in America, being on edge. We talk about family, finances, and relationship. And the fact of the matter, all of those things are intertwined, they're interconnected. And so many of those things are impacted by our decisions. So many things are impacted by laws and politics. And we just want to dive right in to really look at these things as we're on edge.
Absolutely, Dr. J. You know, Saturday I did a special show with this young lady who's a influencer on social media, and her name was Sarah Mann. So those of you that missed that show, it is very enlightening and interesting because I felt it would be beneficial for our audience to hear from a young adult that's going through and has been through mental illness where they were feeling isolated, alone, afraid. And, you know, it has been reported that about 12 million youths between 18 and 25 have gone through a situation where they've, you know, thought about suicide. They're mentally feeling limited in their daily lives. And then we have these mass shootings going on that's heightened the anxiety of our young people. So America is on edge. Our families are at stake. You know, people are going through with jobs, they're losing jobs, and then they're getting jobs that they're overqualified for and underpaid for. And they're going through with relationships because of the fact that the one they thought was the one isn't the one, but because of finances and because of the bridge between relationships with the families, they seem stuck in that situation where they feel, well, better to be with somebody than be alone. So America's on edge. We have the elections coming up in November, and we have all of these things coming up where, you know, America's trying to decide where should we be in the next 4 years. We got Project 2025 that's been on the table that we've heard about it. I said, I looked up, I wanted to know what's this Project 25 they keep talking about. And when I looked it up, I was like, oh my God, that means that if that goes into effect, we are under the threat of uh, one world government, new world order, as we would put it, as the Bible indicated that at one point in our history, we will arrive at that point, a new world order where the government is limited, where the dictator, would be the president, will set the standard for whatever is to be, which is very scary. Very scary. Regardless of who wins, if something like that goes into effect, it is very scary because that means they're talking about defunding the police, cutting back on police. So if we call 911, we're on our own, basically, if they do that. They're talking
Well,
about shutting down certain governments. We're in trouble if they do that. They're talking about getting rid of Head Start. It's in trouble if we do that. They're deporting, mass deportation of individuals. How it's going to be done, no one has ever said a clear plan on how that's going to be done. Does it mean or will it be humane the way that it's done? So there's a lot at stake that America really hasn't thought about the end result of what all this means.
Well, one of the reasons I feel like America hasn't, because of the fact, that's a lot of noise that is blowing. A lot of noise is blowing. A lot of, if you would, incorrectly stated what we're calling facts and statistics. On one end, you see the fact that people have a short-term memory. And let's just be real about it. We had the world's worst pandemic in over a century back in 2020. And that thing ran right over into even present day. Now, when we look at the fact of the matter, I don't want to sound too political. We often hear one side talk about the great economy that they had. But let's be real about it. They inherited a great economy from President Obama.
Yes.
So they inherited a great economy. And so basically, the only thing they had to do is not screw it up. And even inside of that, there are some things that they was trying to do that could have really went shipwreck. Now, we saw low unemployment rates. We saw a lot of things happen during that time. But then we had a major pandemic. That pandemic caused not only job loss, it shut down everything for a period of time. The economy went in a tank and all those things happened. Now, if we're really telling the truth, the last 3.5 years has been about post-pandemic recovery. If you're really telling the truth, the United States of America have rebounded from the pandemic better than any other industrial nation in the world. And we have. The thing about it, what we're seeing is that we're coming out of something that has been very terrible, and we've done it in great rate. Yeah, inflation happened because of the fact, for many different reasons. We talk about the fact of being able to ship, the whole shipping shortage, and all those things there impacted things coming in and things going out. There are a lot of things that contributed to those facts, but the reality is that we're looking at things are happening as they should. We also experience, if you would, unemployment rates being very low. Very low. We hit record unemployment rate here in 2022. And so there are a lot of things that are really actually are going right. But when you hear one side talk about it, they talk about it like, wow, this administration has failed. If you really put it side by side, considering the things that have happened, this administration have done incredibly well to be able to stay afloat and do what it's done. There are a lot of things that have played its part in causing things to be terrible. And one of the things we keep hearing about is, if you would, is the economy. And yeah, we ought to be concerned about the economy and immigration. But let's take one at a time. With the economy, once again, the recovery is happening. You can say what you want to about the Inflation Reduction Act. It is taking place. It is happening. Is it steamrolling? No. Did we get here like overnight? No, we didn't. So that is taking time. But let's take a real good look at immigration as well. You're talking about a whole world that has been in a pandemic inside of it. And even when both sides came to an agreement that could have really signed a really comprehensive, if you would, immigration bill, an individual who was no longer president put his hand on the scale, encouraging his fellow party members not to go along with it. Don't sign it. And for what reason? If you really love the country, then why are you telling them not to do something that you're now complaining about the problem with? It is because it's for self-gratification. It is for taking the credit inside of things. It is the oldest trick in the book. Make everyone suffer, then you come in and you become the hero because you made one decision and those type things happen. Meanwhile, who's suffering? Everyday Americans. Notice what I said, everyday Americans. Not those that was born and inherited $400 million, not those that were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And so when you look at it, it's hard for a person to be empathetic toward people that are less fortunate than them when these individuals have no idea what it is to clock in a 9-to-5 job. This individual have no idea what it is to have to do those type things. And so when we talk about it, now we're forced in a world that we're living up under propaganda. Whatever propaganda is put out there, whatever propaganda is happening, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, so people formulate opinions. Now, this is beyond. This is beyond just moral choices and those things there, because on one end, you have one party that's talking about moral this and moral that, but have the most immoral candidate in history. On one end, you have those things being said. And then you talk about the fact, I was thinking today, things have gotten so bad. I'm like saying, Lord, where are the George Bushes? You know, where are those individuals? Because at least at one time in our politics, you look at the different individuals, and guess what? You may have not liked one or the other, but you did not have to deal with the disdainment of who they were. You didn't have to deal with people
Absolutely.
that were so angry, so bitter, sounding so condescending, so attacking. If you listen to one side, you would think America's the worst place in the world to live. I mean, making up stuff just to make up stuff to cause hatred and division. I mean, listen,
And that's what I want to focus on too tonight, Dr. J. We're in trouble when we're comfortable with the divide.
yes,
That is scary. When we're comfortable pointing fingers at one nationality over the another, we're in trouble because
we're in trouble.
discrimination against one is discrimination against it all. It
Exactly.
is that the polls show that a lot of Hispanics are supporting, the Republican Party. Why? Why? Because of the fact, and I don't understand why, because of the fact that all that person has to do is speak a word and every Hispanic will be under attack, just like they did with Asian people. They
Exactly.
just said one word and the Asians went on attack. Never before in history, since the what Martin Luther King days and civil rights, have we been under attack as a people of color,
Yes.
where we've been moving targets and fearful that if our children go out the door, if they'll come back alive. Yes, there is a lot for us to be afraid of. So racism against one is racism against us all. They're like, well, we don't agree with any abortion and we need to ban abortion and things like that. But until you get in that situation, you can't fully grasp what it all encompassed when you're speaking about that. And even on both parties, when they were talking about it during the debate, it was a problem. But we are in trouble as a nation when our relationships are at risk because of the fact of the divide in the country, the divide in the home, the divide regarding our children, the divide regarding our jobs. There's so much divide with religion, where it never was at this height of this dispensation in my lifetime, because when I was a child, I remember the assassination of Dr. King and JFK. I was born during those times, and I remember the hush when Dr. King was murdered, and I cried and I wept. And with Bobby Kennedy, I remember when he was assassinated. It was a frightening time.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
a frightening time. And yet we stringboarded and became a strong nation. We rebounded. And now we're way back beyond civil rights.
Yeah, because that's intentional political divide. There's intentional racism. There are people that are praising white nationalist policy, those things there. Once again, I am saying, we've always had differences of opinion, but where are the Mitt Romneys? Where are the John McCain's? Where are those individuals who are decent men? Although you may not always agree with what they said, but they wasn't destructive in their speech. They wasn't condemning everything. Everything was, I mean, just personal attacks. I mean, at one point in time, when do you look at your child, your grandchild, and say, listen, okay, one day you can grow up and be president? Like who? Is that the personality that you want? Is no, not at all. And by the same token, where is the common sense is inside of this? You would think anyone who would come within inches of losing their life would be very careful with what comes out of their mouth, would not be so intentional and so in rhetoric and divisive tones there. But yet it's still, they're flourishing it because we appeal to the most darkest side of people in this country. Where is the spirit of hope? Where is the spirit of we shall overcome? Where is the spirit of the fact that, listen, we're better together? Where is that spirit? Where is this whole thing? And I'm not talking Democrat or Republican. I'm talking about what I'm hearing coming out of a mouth that continuously just put people down. It is ridiculous to hear a person continuously divide, segregate as if they're going to be the president for a certain group of people, but the rest of y'all can go to hell in a handbasket. And that's the way that the language comes across. At the end of the day, even if I like your policies, I don't like your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I was for your policies, I don't like your spirit of what you're coming out of. And so when we see those type of things are happening and things are on edge, where's the calming voice? Where's the calming voice? It's not coming from not from the highs of politics. And so it brings us back to what's happening with our families.
Absolutely. And talking about families, if certain individuals are in office, insurance is going to be taken away.
Wow.
And then because you're not going to be able to afford the insurance, Social Security will be taken away. What's going to happen to all the seniors? They're already losing their homes they worked so hard for because of the fact that they can't afford to keep up the maintenance payments. Could you imagine living in your home, paying it off, and your maintenance charges are $2,000 and $3,000 a month?
Yeah. And
your Social Security is $1,000 a month. Seniors have had to sell their homes because they could not afford the maintenance. The insurance has gone so high and skyrocketed that they can't afford the insurance to live in their home. I know I had to refinance my insurance on my home. My insurance was higher than my mortgage payment.
Wow.
It was higher than my mortgage payment. And I was like, my Lord, you could pay your house off, but you never pay it off because of the taxes that are being put upon us in our local communities. And speaking about local communities, we must vote locally.
Absolutely.
We must vote locally because they control the dollars in our community. So, okay, you want to vote how you want to vote for president, fine. But in our community, we need to have a nucleus of people in office that will protect us in our communities, protect our homes, protect our jobs, protect our schools. We need to make sure we have people that are woke, that are for the people and not for a certain nationality, not for certain income of people. They need to protect the school system. They need to protect our law enforcement. They need to protect our firefighters. They need to protect the military. Those that are working for the government, they need to be protected. And if we don't show up and vote and cry loud and spare not, we are going to be in some serious trouble.
Absolutely. And it goes back to being really educated again. When we understand the things that are happening, you mentioned about, housing crisis. This country has a housing crisis. And I can speak about Florida. Florida is a housing crisis on steroids, is what we're seeing. As you're talking about insurance, look how citizens insurance, all those things bellying up and these things that are happening. People are not able to even afford insurance. And then people now, literally taking the risk of owning their home without insurance. And all of these things are happening and there seems to be no relief anywhere. You have a governor who will turn down federal monies that could help in certain things simply because you don't like the party that is handing it down. I mean, all the kinds of things that have not.
Don't just brush over that,
yes,
Dr. J. Don't
Absolutely.
brush over that because that goes back to what I said about making sure you vote for those that are in control of your state. Absolutely. And in your local cities, because when there's money available, if it's not accepted by those that are in charge, we won't receive it. That goes from the head down. That affects healthcare, that affects schools, that affects jobs.
Absolutely. And we've seen that happen when we reject things and then we go and complain about things on the other end. We are living in a time that we must tighten up. People, as much as Florida has been one of the number one tourist states to retire, people are not able to live anymore. There's just as much of an exodus leaving here. I mean, there are so many people that are leaving. It's like escaping Alcatraz. I would love to stay there. I love the weather. I love all these things, but I can't afford to stay there. And one of the local things that have been running here in particularly Palm Beach County for the last year or two is a whole piece about price out of paradise. Price out. You can't afford to stay there. You look at the fact that we have children that go off to college and they don't return home to Palm Beach County, especially because they cannot afford to live here. And then when they do come home, many kids are forced to live with their parents and start all over again, that type of thing. There has to be things that are done. You know, it's time out for all the rhetoric. It is time out for it. At the end of the day, you know, if we're really going to be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, then it's only the people that can hold the government accountable. That means that not only registering to vote, and with that being said, people, I want to encourage you, October 7th you got to be registered to vote by October 7th, or you will not be able to vote in this coming election. Number two, I'm going to urge you seriously to go to your supervisor of elections website there and make sure, watch what I'm about to say, make sure, put your information in and make sure that you are still registered. Because if you missed this last election cycle, I'm not talking about necessarily the presidential election cycle, but if you missed the cycle too, you could have been purged from the roll. You could have been purged. And so you have to
and that's nationwide. That's not saying that every state has their own thing where they can purge you regardless of how many years you've been registered. They can actually kick you out of being registered to vote.
And those things are very important. The third thing I want to say is this, is that you've got to be ready. You got to make sure that. So if you're listening today, you have an elderly parent or a person who is challenged in whatever way, do your homework. Make sure that they're eligible. Make sure they're registered still. If not, get them registered. And lastly, what I'm going to say to you is this, vote early. If you have opportunity to vote early, vote by mail, vote early, because I'm going to say to you, and one is connected to the other, if you show up to that election poll, if you show up on that November day to vote and you discover then that you're no longer on the roll, you're going to be heartbroken. If you show up then and find out, you know, even some people are being disqualified because their signatures doesn't match. You may need to update your signature. All of those things are important because this is part of the voter suppression that happened. People, listen, as a resident born and raised in Selma, Alabama, the site of what was responsible for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Listen, folks died. Folks was beaten to a pulp for this right to vote. And let me say something to you. Even when we started voting, this last national election was the largest turnout in history. And how did we get rewarded? They moved the goalposts again. Voter suppressive law, lying just to say that no one stole anything. What happened was this: people came out and they really voted. They voted and they turned out. So now here's the excuses. Well, they got illegal immigrants voting. You have no documented proof of that. Not at all. But these things have been created.
Here's the thing. Well, here's the thing that makes everything so silly. And people are so gullible, but they're believing it, just like they believe people are eating the animals, is that if we as American are having a hard time voting when we have our ID and show proof that we have been registered voters, how can illegal individuals vote? Yeah. It's crazy. So we are so reality driven that we get caught up in all this hype. And, you know, because somebody is saying this and they can, you know, throw slang and, you know, the mindset of the people just reminds me of how it was in the Bible days when the people were being led out of Egypt. And as soon as one little thing, they was like, let us go back. Let's go back. At least we had food and water. Let us go back. You know, regardless of what the deliverance that had happened, they still wanted to go back to familiarity because they were comfortable there. But absolutely. I'm here to tell you that from this point on, there will be no comfortable space for any individual to abide or stay for. This is going to be a transition, rather good or bad. This is going to be a transition where the American people must stand up. And, you know, I've been watching for years these movies called The Purge.
Oh, yeah.
This is almost what reality is going to look like when you can give your law enforcement the carte blanche to just kill and shoot anybody. You can pull athletes out before a game and throw them on the street and, you know, basically embarrass them in front of the world because say, look what I did. I was able to pull him out. I don't care if he playing ball, throw him on the street, treat him like a common criminal. When this is allowed to be, you know, nationwide, regardless of who you are, just like you said, suppose I didn't have any money, suppose I wasn't my name, what would have happened to me? Would you have killed me? Would I have been another person with your foot on my neck?
Yeah.
When we're able to sit back and say this is okay, America's in trouble.
The value of life, and it goes back to this, you know, and people may not want to believe this, but here's the thing, you know, when we don't honor, when we have nothing that we honor, when we don't honor, we don't behold the law of God, we don't behold any law whatsoever. This false concept of freedom is that we think freedom is the absence of boundaries, but we must have boundaries, things to govern us. You know, without a vision, people cast out restraints. There must be vision. There must be boundaries. There must be things that are put in place. And I'm amazed at how much the fight and oppositions are. We value different things in life. Listen, I'm not out there admonishing anyone to go get an abortion. That is not my platform. They tell you go get an abortion or not. That is not what I'm saying. But by the same token, I'm not about to look at a person who have been raped, a person who have dealt with incest, a person whose life is very much on the line and they're about to die. And I'm going to say to them, no, let the person die because of the fact, no, not at all. And we just got to get to it. Life is more than just about abortion, because the very life that we do allow here, on the other end, guess what? We're not putting the things in place to help them sustain life. So do they die before or do they die during? Do they die during? For all kind of things, being arrested for all kind of things, being shot and killed for all kind of things. And I'm still a little puzzled, people, to help me pray. And I pray for number 45. I do. I pray for him. I thank God that he wasn't assassinated. I thank God that they missed. But this last thing, this past Sunday, listen, folks, it was an assassination attempt. The person, he had a rifle, pointed through the fence. But guess what? Never aimed toward him because he didn't see him. Number two, never fired at all. Only casing was found by the Secret Service agents who fired their weapons, and this person got away. Now, I'm not minimizing what happened, but this is what I am saying. This man here that was arrested, he is charged as a convicted felon, with a firearm. Okay. There are many convicted felons. Many of them. Let's see. Many of these convicted felons can't get a job. Many of these convicted felons can't even get housing in certain places because of their convicted felon. Yet it's still, I don't know what's wrong with our laws. How can the person with 34 recent convicted felon get the biggest house in the land, the White House?
I'm still trying to figure out why those people that men and women are in prison with life sentences for smoking marijuana when it's legal now. But yet you want to release individuals who fired on the Capitol to try and overthrow the government. You want to release people with firearms that killed and murdered innocent people, but yet people are serving life sentences because they caught a case with marijuana.
Make it make sense. Make it make sense. My point is this, and I go back to what I said earlier.
And they can't vote, even if they get out. They cannot vote.
No,
but you can have an office.
Yeah, it's funny. And we here in the state of Florida, here election cycle before last, we voted yes for Amendment 4, which was to restore their rights to vote. And yet it's still, regardless of what the will of the people was through the voting, once again, much like they did with voter suppression, they moved the goalposts. And all of a sudden, oh, now you got to pay your fines before you can vote. And although there were many organizations that came and they helped pay the fines, they found another reason to deny them. The reality is this. There's a discrimination. There is no sense of forgiveness. Oh, except for if you are millionaire. There's no sense of forgiveness inside of this. I believe that when people have served their time, when they have paid their debt to society, I believe those rights should be restored back to them. I believe that. There's a little thing called redemption.
Yes.
Restorative justice. These things should be in place. And yet it's still, I don't understand. Even as believers, we speak out of both sides of our mouth. We talk about the good God and the grace God and the love God, but yet it's still, that doesn't seem to apply to certain people. We tend to determine who deserves grace. We tend to selflessly determine who deserves redemption. We simply selflessly determine, that based upon factors that should not even matter. Is it their economic status? Is it the color of their skin? Is it their plight in life? But at the end of the day, folks, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. This is not a joke. Many folks, you're going to choose to sit on the sideline and not go vote. And as much as that is your prerogative, I want you to understand that even when you don't vote, you vote. When you don't vote, you've enabled the other person an advantage. And when I say the other person, either side, you've enabled them. So the reality is that we've got to go back to real prayer. And I got to hit this part too. It's time to have real prayer, real revival, yes, real repentance in this nation. And I say this even to the church. It's time out. We need to stop with our own little private agendas. We need to stop thinking that serving God is all about a praise party. We need to think that serving God is all about our programs and what we're wearing, the latest fashion, and how cool and how close to the edge we can live and please and look like the world. It is time for true revival. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then. But the problem is that when we're self-serving, when we're self-seeking, when we're self-glorifying, because every person seems to be all right as long as they're in power. Every person seems to be all right with everything else as long as they are in power. But see, that's the thing that makes us different. When we understand this, that we still have an obligation to think of the least, the lost, the left out. Remember the widows and the orphans and those individuals that we were called to really, we don't think about those things now because everything is about how do I get ahead? What's my next dime? How can I get those things? And we will step on anybody and anything. We'll step on loyalty. We'll step on friends. We'll step on family. We'll step on anything to get our way. And at the end of the day, what is real ministry? It's being able to give to people. It's being able to do something for people who don't have the ability to reciprocate it. They can't even return it. But you know what? At the end of the day, it goes very simple. When I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was in prison, did you visit me? Very simple. And if we're not answering those questions, even as a nation, even as individuals, there's so many things that are dividing us. The thing that's dividing the family, dividing us, our finances and relationship, to the point that we get so blinded by it that we can't even come together and say, listen, come, let us reason. Let us reason together. We can't. We brag today about destruction. We brag today about breaking up. We brag today about those things. We are quick draw McGraw. And when I say quick draw, I'm talking about quick withdrawal. We withdraw from anything that has friction to it. It's a different day and time. Time is winding up. And I'm telling you, being on edge in this country today, it's interesting. We've always shared difference of opinion, but we've always been able to agree to
disagree. Never done it violently.
Right. We could agree to disagree, but we now live in a day and time that things are so on the edge. Look at what's happening. The proliferation of violence that is happening. Our young people, younger than younger, we're seeing violence happening. Just up the road, 11-year-old, just up the road here in Florida, just 11-year-old, threatening school shooting and violence. Just last month, 14-year-old. School violence, and we're seeing it happen. We go back to the days of Columbine High School, and it's been crazy ever since that time. And America doesn't see the shift that has happened. The shift that's happened, not just because it's happened, but somewhere along the line, we have perpetuated the lie in God we trust, but it's not in God we trust. We are trusting in everything else. We have not trusted in God. And it's a funny thing to me that even those that read the same Bible and all those things there seemingly have a shade inside of their way of loving. It seems to be color preference, tone preference, situational. But that's not what it's meant to be. So perhaps we're being called back to a place of true repentance. Perhaps we're being called back to a place where we are the people to come together. Let's reason.
Oh, we're at a place, Dr. J, where we will be forced to go down on our knees. We are at this place where this is what is going to happen. We will be on our knees. You know, it has been 385 mass shootings, not just schools, but mass shootings across the states. 385, 24 mass school shootings in Florida, and 16 mass shootings in Georgia, and 46 children under 18 have been killed at these school shootings. So I want to ask those that are listening and looking, look at your loved one, your child, your significant other, your aunts, your grandma. Look at them. Do you want an onslaught of their lives? Because, you know, they can walk out the door, and because someone don't like you, they can kill you, and you get off scot-free saying it was, what do you call it? Standing your ground.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you know, I felt threatened by grandma. She looked like she was going to pull something out of her bra and kill me. So do we want cowboys and Indians? Do we want that fear heightened for when our children are pulled over by the police, they're subject to be killed and no repercussions for that? Are you willing to accept that with this new world order that may take effect, that we won't be able to get funding for college, Head Start taken away, budget cuts to the police, fire department, our voice taken away because we have a dictator that all he has to do is speak a word and say, this is what is going to be. And people say, Dr. J, well, I just want somebody who's going to take care of the border. We need to stop letting all these people come in here. But does that compensate for all that's about to come? And we got 4 years now. Now, keep in mind, he can have government extend the years that he can be in office, or they can be in office. You could extend it past the 4 years or say, oh, you can be have 12 years in office. So the people's voice will be taken away. Is this what you want? You living fine now in your homes, you know, you got your bank account. But when you can't afford to pay your house that's paid off because the insurance are high, when you can't afford to buy an electric car because the government has mandated that the gas vehicles be taken away and everybody get an electric car, what are you going to do? How are your children going to be able to get to school and not for nothing, walk to school? I mean, I see little kids in kindergarten walking to school without their parent, and it's pitch black, Dr. J. Open target for predators.
Wow.
You're going to have to get yourself up out of that bed and make sure your child gets to school and make sure they get home, because the funding will be cut for them to have bus service.
You know what?
Look at the whole role of the matter. Consider the matter. What are you going to do with your elderly when they can't afford to live and their insurances won't cover illness and diseases? At a certain point, they'll say, well, they're too old. We don't need to even waste money on saving their life. How are you going to take that? But yet you're worried about, oh, I just want the border shut.
Boy, I tell you, we become
I
very
want the border shut too, to be honest with you, because I don't understand why all of a sudden it's okay for this great influx. But there has to be a humane way of doing things, because by the grace of God, there goes I.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's so much to look at. And at the end of the day, people, I'm going to say this to you. It's easy to be dismissive when things are going good for you. It's easy to be dismissive when things look like, you know, they're faring real well for you. But do you understand that when you see these massive overhaul changes, the dissolving of the Department of Education, changing people, you know, replacing civil workers and you know, and different people and different offices,
replacing it with AI,
yeah, and all these different things, you're looking at some things that are going to impact us all. I believe this, that yeah, America has lost its place because it's lost its faith. Collectively, even to the point that I believe that the church is silent. They're silent in many ways. I heard somebody say, yeah, but we're praying. Yeah, we are. But prayer is not our only language. See, there must be action with
faith
our prayer.
Without works.
You know, Nehemiah went to rebuild, went to rebuild the wall, went to rebuild. And guess what? He found himself both praying and fighting, building and yet protecting. And the thing about it is this: we've allowed so many things to go in this country. We've allowed so many things to go unchecked. We're dealing with persons that want to revise history, don't want to tell the truth about our history. Because if we told the truth about our history, it'd be too easy for us to see that literally we're trying to repeat it, just on another level. We're headed toward repeating it, and we've got to be vigilant. We got to be cognizant in the moment, and we got to be intentional about what we do. I'm saying to you, while everybody's trying to figure out who can be cool, who can act like they got it all together, listen, think about more than just yourself, your children, your grandchildren. What world will they be left to deal with? What is it will they be left to deal with? And if we're not standing up now, if we're not standing up against things that oppose us, the things that not only the things of God, but opposes anything about quality of life, then could you imagine what they will inherit? What will they inherit?
And talking about that, Jay, the parenting skills have gone so far left till, you know, that's why we have children killing children and raping each other, and because the home life has been disintegrated.
Absolutely.
The parents are working, trying to make ends meet. And as you said so eloquently last week, who's the third parent parenting your child?
Exactly.
Because you want to, but you can't afford to. And they're left to go out robbing and beating and raping children, elderly people, stealing, breaking into the home, stealing cars with guns. Where they get these guns from?
Exactly.
Where did they get the wherewithal to think that it's okay to get a firearm and just kill someone and move on? And not only that, we've had so many instances here in South Florida where children have killed their parents and had a party at the house with their bodies locked in the other room.
Exactly.
The bodies of the dead parents in the other room, and they having a party in the house.
Now, what does that say to us? That says to us a lot. That says to us that we're living in a day and time that there's no conscience. There's no
No
conscience.
conscious.
No, not all.
No
There's no
conscious.
conscience and there's no consequences. And because that's the case, we're living in this world that is just absolutely frightening right about now.
Yeah, America is on edge. It's in crisis.
And
it's up to us as a people. It's up to us as a nation to say no more. Stand up for something. Stand up for freedom. And when I say freedom, freedom to go to the grocery store, freedom to go to a movie, freedom to go out to dinner with who you want to go out to dinner with, and not being dictated because of the fact that you're not the right color. You don't like interracial marriages. You know, we have got to get back to being a nation which was supposed to be built on love. In God we trust. God is love.
Exactly.
Where did we go wrong? Where did we start derailing? So we have to really get back to family. What does family look like to you, and what can you do to make family better?
You know, we have to get back there. You know, it goes very simple. You know, love thy neighbor as ourselves, and loving one another, and getting back to it. You know, I'm very grateful. I've had the opportunity over these last 6 years to have some wonderful neighbors. Wonderful neighbors. Those people don't like me. We're not the same shade of color. But the one thing that we have in common, that we have love and respect. And we got to get back to that place now. We got to get back to the place where we restore this thing called LOVE. What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
That's right. We have to look out for one another, and we must absolutely be our brother's keepers. And one of the things we absolutely positively must do is vote. If this show has been a blessing, I invite you to subscribe to Hot Topics from the Soul on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to Hot Topics from the Soul, and whatever you do in the next couple of months, make it your business to register to vote, and make sure that you love one another as you do yourself. And if you love yourself, that means you won't destroy yourself. Thank you for tuning in to Hot Topics from the Soul.
Exactly. Yes.